Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. This is Rob Vino of Rob Vino Sports here with what's going to be a weekly feature. It's our Tuesday look ahead to college football. Today we're going to go over 6 of the top 25 games, the key games everybody's been talking about for the last, say, 7 to 10 days. They all go on Saturday. We're going to give you an early preview from a betting perspective on these games, let you know what we know about them here early in the week on Tuesday. For those of you listening, click over to robvinosports.com throughout the season. Use it as your top source for all handicapping information. If you go over there now and click on the NCAA Football Board tab, you can find all the games in rotation order, the current point spread. You can find my power rating line on the game. You can also get updated injuries on all the games. Once again, it'll be a constant source for handicapping information throughout the season, throughout the basketball season, and continuing on to baseball season. And like I say, this Tuesday show, you can check in with us each and every Tuesday throughout the football season, myself and Rob O'Connor, who's with me today, and you can get our early look ahead to college football. While I'm at it, let me introduce Rob O'Connor. He's going to be the host of the show throughout the season. He's a 12-year veteran handicapper. He's a contributor to the Rob Vino Sports site. He'll be releasing plays along with myself and Derek Davis. You can find our plays on the website. You can purchase. So there's a lot of stuff going on over on the website that you'll want to go ahead and check out. Rob also, like I said, key contributor to Rob Vino Sports. When you get to Rob Vino Sports, I urge everybody to go ahead and look at our 2016 college football betting guide, 416 pages of team-by-team information, all 128 FBS teams covered with their 2015 betting numbers and the 2016 look ahead. You get all kinds of stuff in this preseason annual that you won't find in other preseason annuals. Many that you buy off the shelf really just go toward personnel, returning starters, things like that. Here we're focused in on the betting numbers. You can get first half numbers against the spread, over-unders, second half numbers against the spread, over and unders, how teams fared last year in those particular instances. The 2014 book also, if you want to go back and get that as well, or the 2015 book, we'll have 2014's results. Just a ton of information there. In our notes column, we take a lot of pride in putting in any notes that we see as we watch these games and then use it in the book next year. So you can refer back to a particular game and remember, Michigan State played without their quarterback in that particular game against Ohio State last year. A lot of good stuff for handicapping that you can use. Like I say, I recommend it to everybody. It's available at Amazon.com. Go ahead and give it a look. Rob Vino Sports 2016 College Football Betting Guide. It's our second edition. A lot of hard work. I need to thank Derek Davis and also Rodylon Pudolph for their work in that. It was a 3-man effort. And when you hear 416 pages, you understand how hard we worked on it. But we encourage everybody to, once you've seen it, go ahead and give us a review and let us know what you want to see for next year. Like I say, we're trying to focus in on the gambling aspect. I've been in the handicapping business 24 years now. And as I previously stated, my host here, or our host for the Tuesday show, Rob O'Connor, been doing this for 12 years. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring Rob in here. He's going to host the show each and every Tuesday. Like I say, we'll go through 6 key games. We'll give you an under-the-radar game, one that you may not be looking at, that we can offer to you as a potential play for the week, and also maybe a top 25 team that would be on upset alert. Find us here each and every Tuesday. And let me bring in now Rob O'Connor. Rob, why don't you take it away?
Well, Rob, thanks for having me. Looking forward to hosting the program here on Tuesdays throughout college football season. As you mentioned, we had a few college games already this year, Hawaii and Cal, little FCS action. But this weekend is when we really fire it up and get things going. Got some games Thursday and Friday, but the meat of the action for week 1 is definitely going to be on Saturday. A lot of big matchups. One of the best opening weekends in quite a while in terms of marquee matchups. Not a lot of the big programs are going to be playing cupcakes in week one. So we've got a lot of great games to go through this afternoon. Let's start with game 183-184, Clemson and Auburn. Going to be a big test for Clemson right out of the gate. They are coming off of a very disappointing loss to Alabama last year. They get to go right back and play an SEC school again. True road game for Clemson to open up at Auburn, but they are the favorites. Rob, why don't you take us through this game and what you see potentially as some key matchups and points to focus in on here?
Yeah, it's an interesting game, obviously. Non-conference battle. Clemson almost universally recognized as one of your top 5 teams in the country, a team with a ton of potential to get back to the college football playoff this year, Rob. Current point spread on this game, Clemson opened up 8.5, but there's been Auburn money. You see the game as low as 7 in a couple of venues. Most shops are holding this one at 7.5 right now with a total of 62. That has been bet up from the number of 60. So a little bit of Auburn money so far, a little bit of Clemson money so far. Word came out today that Auburn has suspended their starting free safety, Stephen Roberts, for this contest. For a team that had defensive struggles like Auburn did last year, it is working with a new defensive coordinator this season. I'll get to that in a minute. You certainly don't want to lose any of your starting players. They already had lost starting cornerback Jamel Dean. He injured his knee during summer practice, and he's out indefinitely. So you're talking about 2 pieces missing from that secondary going up against Deshaun Watson and company. A little bit of a tough road for Auburn. They do have the home field, though, like you say, game 1, everybody's always fired up. We'll see how Auburn fares. Let me get back to the new coordinator here, though, on defense. It's going to be Kevin Steele, and he formerly was a defensive coordinator for Clemson. He knows a little bit about them, but not all that much. He was with LSU last year. Not that much about the current personnel. He was with LSU last year as the defensive coordinator. Prior to that, he was with Alabama for 2 years. And then, of course, he was with Clemson before that. But Kevin Steele brings a new defensive system to Auburn very quickly. When I talked about the 2016 Rob Vino Sports College Football Betting Guide, you can get every bit of this information inside that book. We went through every single head coaching change, every single offensive and defensive coordinator change, and in detail described the new system for you in that book. So if you don't know what system a team is going to play, certainly that 2016 College Football Guide will come in very handy. In this case, Kevin Steele is going to be bringing the 3rd different defense, Rob, in the last 3 years to Auburn. He's coming in, he plays a 4-2-5 system. You see that a lot out of teams that don't have enough depth in the front 7 size-wise, so they go to 5, try to put more speed on the field using kind of a strong safety / outside linebacker. Kevin Steele believes in that it'll be his base. They went kind of slow during the spring here installing it. He wanted to make sure that the players gripped it right off the bat rather than throw a whole bunch at them out of the playbook. It seemed to go pretty well through the spring and the fall. You never know until they hit the playing field. And when you're playing a team as explosive as Clemson, maybe a couple of busts in coverages or reads could be in order for this team. We'll have to see. Steele is going to use a little bit of what Will Muschamp left behind from a terminology standpoint, too, just to try and make it easier to simplify things on these players. You can see it's a system that I would say by year 2 will be in good shape. But game 1 of year 1 against Clemson, that's a difficult opener for this team. The players like it, but you know what, Rob? When you see these system switches by teams, it seems like the players always love what the new guy is bringing in. It means that the last guy didn't really succeed for the most part. Auburn seems to like it. They've named their not their new starting quarterback, but their starting quarterback for this season. it will be Sean White, the sophomore, who's had some playing time, 6 games started last year. There was a pretty good quarterback race, a heated quarterback battle for the better part of the summer practice before Gus Malzahn went ahead and announced that White would be the starter. It could be a situation, Rob, where guys are looking over their shoulder at the quarterback spot all season long if they don't succeed right off the bat. I think what you have in Auburn is you've got a pretty solid offensive team. To me, the defense is in question. On the Clemson side, you may look at them in any other preseason annual and find that there's not a lot of returning starters here on defense and think that they may be down. But I will say this, the guys that are stepping in for Clemson had a ton of game experience last year and, in my estimation, are just waiting their turn. So we'll see how Clemson's defense fares, how Auburn's defense fares. I think if you have concerns, if you're a fan of either team, or if you're looking to play this game, your major concerns are probably on the defensive side of the football. I would think that Clemson is in a better situation right now. My power ratings made this game Clemson minus 9.5. As I said earlier, it's been bet down almost universally to Clemson minus 7.5, so the money's gone the other way.
Well, Rob, let's keep going here. We'll talk about another SEC team, Texas A&M. They're going to be facing off against UCLA from the Pac-12. It's going to be an interesting opening weekend for the Pac-12. We'll get into another game that they're going to be playing an SEC team in a little later. But UCLA is going to be battling Texas A&M, and this really kind of is a statement game here in terms of the Pac-12 trying to make a little noise early in the season. What do you see UCLA being able to do against the Aggies here on opening weekends?
Yeah, this is another interesting one because with UCLA, you have the marquee guy, right? You have Josh Rosen, the sophomore quarterback who tore it up as a freshman. But for Rosen this year and for UCLA, the receiving core he's going to work with is entirely brand new. His starting receivers from last year are all off to the NFL now. So you have a new rapport to build with guys that you're going to throw the football to. Paul Perkins, their number one running back last year, also off to the NFL. I don't think they'll have much trouble as far as running the football is concerned. Offensive line is in good shape. And like I say, Rosen, one of your better quarterbacks in the nation this year. But we'll see how he can do with the brand-new receiving core. I think where UCLA could excel this year, Rob, is on the defensive side of the football. Remember last year, the first 3 weeks of the season, they were gutted up the middle with defensive injuries. The one everybody will recall would be Miles Jack. But let's not forget that defensive tackle Eddie Vanderdoes went out early in the season. I think it was game 1, and he was potentially first-team All-Pac-12 coming into the season. Well, Eddie Vanderdoes is back now at his defensive tackle post, and with him, you've got a pretty solid defensive line, good linebacking core, and a real strong secondary. So I think UCLA, maybe the defense will have to anchor the team early on in the season. If we flip the switch and look at Texas A&M here, I'll start with the defense. John Chavis is in his second season now with Texas A&M. For those of you, again, as I go ahead and give analysis on these games for you all, I keep remembering things and key components of the 2016 Rob Vino Sports College Football Betting Guide. If you go in there, I've listed my top 12 projected against the spread teams this year, 12 teams that I think are going to be successful against the point spread this season. If you go through that, you'll find that Texas A&M is one of those that I really like. One of the reasons being John Chavis in his second season. We know the job he did at LSU. He was an outstanding defensive coach for Tennessee for 14 years before that. But in this second season now, and he's got the bookend defensive ends, Myles Garrett and company should be real good on defense this year. I expect a big improvement out of A&M on that side of the ball. What we look at from maybe a questionable standpoint is going to be the offensive side of the football. It's not questionable because of talent. talent-laden is a good way to describe this offense. They may have the best wide receiving core in all of football. You could argue that in a barroom with somebody. You wouldn't be wrong. Might not be exactly right, but you could argue that Texas A&M has the best wide receiving core in all of football. Noah Mazzone comes over from UCLA, which makes this game real interesting, right? You know, they're going to play UCLA, and here's UCLA's offensive coordinator, now the coordinator for the other side. He knows UCLA inside and out. We'll see if he game plans. Well, we know he'll game plan accordingly, but we'll see what he comes up with to attack that UCLA defense. Noah Mazzone, Kevin Sumlin, obviously an up-tempo spread guy. Mazzone's brought in. He's the same type of up-tempo spread guy. They've got certainly Trevor Knight to quarterback this team from Oklahoma. He excels in this up-tempo spread. Well, the one thing you want to know about Mazzone is that he's a good buddy of Kevin Sumlin's. They coached together years ago, and they share a lot of the same concepts here. What this team is aiming to do is upgrade their pace even more. So if you thought Texas A&M was a fast team last year as far as play calling, getting to the line of scrimmage, getting the next play off, if you thought they were fast last year, they're extremely fast this year. At least that's what they want to be. That's one of the philosophies. They practiced it all through the spring, all through the summer. We'll see if UCLA's defense can keep up with the pace. Obviously, a Pac-12 defense faces up-tempo teams all the time, so UCLA may be one of the better defenses to go up against them. But I think a couple of key components, once again, Mazzone, the new offensive coordinator for A&M, Trevor Knight, the new quarterback for A&M, and, of course, Mazzone's affiliation with UCLA last year kind of gives a little bit of an edge, in my estimation, gives a little bit of an edge to the Texas A&M Aggies. You could say that Jim Moore and UCLA know what Mazzone's all about, but they don't know A&M's personnel, and they don't really know Kevin Sumlin all that well. So I think the edge there does go to Texas A&M. They're a 3-point favorite, I think, Rob, in this game, if I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Last I had checked, they were a 3-point favorite, yes.
Yeah, 3, and your total here opened up at 54 and bet down now to 53, which shows you that the money likes the defenses in this one. And that money could be also indicating to the public out there that they just don't believe in the UCLA offense against this type of defense in week 1. Again, there's some rapport trouble, and not trouble. I don't want to say it's trouble because we don't know, but you have to start anew with brand-new receivers for Josh Rosen. We'll see how it goes.
Well, the next game on the card to take a look at is game 193-194, LSU versus Wisconsin. I guess you could technically call it a neutral field game, as they'll be playing it at Lambeau Field, so technically not Wisconsin's home field, but most certainly they will have an edge in fan support on Saturday. You look at LSU, their expectations are quite high this year. They're opening this game as a 10-point favorite. Les Miles, probably a little bit on the hot seat this year, almost ended up getting fired at the end of last season, but the administration just totally blew the situation, and Les Miles ended up managing to get himself another year after the fans and the team really rallied around him in the final regular season game last year. Now the expectations are high. They're laying 10 on the road to open the season. Can they meet these expectations in 2016, or is there a chance that Wisconsin will be a speed bump early in the year?
You know, we probably can't tell anybody listening what they haven't heard already about LSU, right, Rob? It all boils down to quarterback Brandon Harris, and if he performs well this season, LSU could be your national title winner. They have that much talent surrounding him, both on the offensive and defensive sides of the football. It all starts with Leonard Fournette. We're not telling anybody anything new there, but the wide receiving core, Dupree and Durrell and Johnson, you're talking about NFL guys at the wide receiver positions and the slot positions. So, again, it all falls on the shoulders of Brandon Harris. He's lined up behind a pretty good offensive line, and they have the defense to go ahead and get themselves into that 4-team college football playoff. What's interesting here, again, defensive coordinator switch. LSU brought in Dave Aranda to be their new defensive coordinator. Where Dave Aranda come from? He came from Wisconsin. He was Wisconsin's DC the last couple of years, did wonders with that defense. I'll tell you this, of all the work I did on system changes, offensive and defensive coordinator changes for this year, and player reactions to all of those, I don't think there was a more positive response in everything I heard and read than the LSU players to Dave Aranda and his style of defense. Remember, before Wisconsin, he was at Utah State in 2012 when they put together a really strong defense. So the players love the new system. The philosophy's a little bit different, and it's a little bit different for the third year because remember, 3 years ago now, they had John Chavis down there. Chavis left for A&M. They brought in Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele changed to his style of defense, and now Dave Aranda has totally taken LSU out of the 4-3 and put them in a 3-4 system that he ran at Wisconsin. Like I say, they've got the personnel to fit the 3-4 scheme. The players absolutely love it. The enthusiasm ran real high throughout the spring and throughout the summer with the stuff that he's implemented, including various blitz packages that weren't involved last year that the players seem to really like. So LSU, it's a full system switch, and you're always leery of those first year, especially first game. But the fact that Dave Aranda knows Wisconsin inside and out, and that's who his defense is going to go up against the first game of the season, and you're going to start with a quarterback who hasn't started an NCAA game yet. Bart Houston got the nod over Alex Hornibrook. Houston's a senior but sat behind Joel Stave for the last couple of years. I would expect Aranda to attack again against Bart Houston and company. Good news for Wisconsin. Corey Clement, their star running back, who was injured the majority of last season, back as their starter this year. So Wisconsin, in typical Wisconsin form, under Paul Chryst now, will certainly lean on the running game to try and help the young quarterback out. You can expect LSU to stack the box against the running game, no doubt about it, and force Houston to beat them through the air. There's been a couple of key injuries for Wisconsin within the last 7 days. They lost their starting left guard, Dan Volz. 27 games started at center the last 3 years. He's going to miss this game and the remainder of the season due to knee injury issues. He was on the Remington Award watch list, which is for your top linemen across the country. So that's how big of a loss that is. 21 games started. A player that was forced into retirement because of knee issues. So it puts, Wisconsin a little bit behind the 8 ball. When you're talking about a guy who was your starting center, don't forget they make all the line calls and everything. So now you've got a brand new quarterback and a brand new center. That's difficult in an opening game against LSU. And then just today, starting inside linebacker TJ Edwards started every single game last year. Led the team in tackles with 84, and he was fourth on the team with 6.5 tackles for loss. He's out now as well. So these are key losses for Wisconsin, Rob, and I think that's why we see the number on this game so high. LSU opened 8.5. They're currently up to 10. Total on the game was 48.5 when it opened. It's bet down to 44.5. I think, just from a fundamental standpoint, the 22 that are going to be on the field at any given time, Wisconsin may have a real difficult time moving the football in this one. They're going to have to rely on their defense to force Brandon Harris to make mistakes for LSU. I think they'll, obviously first and foremost stack it up against Leonard Fournette. And if they can contain him, it falls on Harris's shoulders. Interesting game. Both quarterbacks, I'm sure, will be looked at by everybody watching to see which way these two teams are going to go this year. But for Wisconsin, I think they have a few more difficulties to overcome here.
They will definitely have their hands full on Saturday, to say the least. Moving along, we've got a very interesting opening weekend game in the Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic down in Atlanta. Technically a neutral site game. UNC playing against Georgia. Probably be a few more Georgia fans in the building than UNC fans, but not a terrible road trip for UNC and their backers. UNC has a very interesting schedule this year. They play 2 FCS teams this year, and there's absolutely no margin for error for them in terms of needing to probably run the table to have a shot at the playoff. And last year, they got tripped up on opening weekend by South Carolina, lost a tough one, 17-13, went on to run the table in the regular season after that, and really put up a fight against Clemson in the ACC title game, coming up just a bit short after a pretty good comeback in the fourth quarter. You look at Georgia, they have a new head coach. Expectations are high, but they are not favored to win the SEC East. That distinction belongs to Tennessee this year. What do you see here in this very interesting matchup to open the season?
Well, let's start with Georgia, Rob, because they had the most upheaval during the offseason, right? Kirby Smart, their new coach, comes over. Everybody knows Alabama's defensive coordinator for the last 8 years. Going to run the show now. He brought in Jim Chaney to run the offense. Jim Chaney was Pittsburgh's offensive coordinator last year, and prior to that, 2 seasons before, he was running the show for Arkansas as their offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. On the defensive side, they brought in Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker has been around quite a while, not only college football but NFL football. You'll remember him from the Bears a couple of years ago. He was also with Jacksonville of the NFL. Last year, he was Alabama's defensive backs coach. So there's a little bit of continuity there between Smart and Tucker. From a defensive standpoint, you have the Alabama defensive coordinator and the Alabama defensive backs coach both working together here. System changes abound for this team. Jim Chaney, his background is kind of crazy, Rob, because if you can remember back, and I'm sure you do, back to Purdue when Joe Tiller was the head coach. Joe Tiller was one of the first guys to bring in these up-tempo, pass-happy schemes. Drew Brees played under Joe Tiller. Jim Chaney was one of the orchestrators of that Joe Tiller offense. And then, of course, he goes to Arkansas and runs a pro-style offense, so he's well-versed on anything that you want to do. For Georgia, you can expect, now that we've seen the announcement that Nick Chubb will not be on a carries limit this week, you can expect with a brand-new quarterback on this team that they're going to feed the running game, make it easy on the new quarterback, and try and run behind that offensive line. So it should be pretty simplified. I'd expect more out of Chaney toward his Arkansas days at this point than I would his Joe Tiller and Purdue days, but you should know that his playbook is very expansive, and Georgia probably can make changes on the fly during Smart's tenure. What we see early this year might not be what we see late in the season, and it might not be what we see next season once they've got one under their belt. But I'd expect very conservative pro-style offense here. That's what they're going to run. On the other side of the football, Kirby Smart's the head coach, but it's his defensive system that was implemented here. Going to run the same Alabama 3-4 defense that he ran there. Scheme fits the personnel that Georgia has. They played in a 3-4 under Jeremy Pruitt, the previous defensive coordinator. And the principles, Pruitt and Smart, I talked about Noel Mazzone and Kevin Sumlin being good friends dating back to earlier coaching days. And the same goes for Jeremy Pruitt and Kirby Smart. So the defense that was present here last year have a lot of the same principles that it'll have this year. It wasn't that difficult. It wasn't a complete overhaul for the players to learn. Obviously, every coach is different, and now you have Kirby Smart and Mel Tucker. The players have to learn different coaching tendencies, but still, it's not a complete overhaul of the system. Like I said earlier, you're going to get a heavy dose of Nick Chubb. North Carolina knows that coming in. Larry Fedora's group, they're working with a brand-new quarterback, too. Now, Mitch Trubisky, the new quarterback for North Carolina, is extremely highly touted as a passer. We'll see if he can come in and get it done right away, but they've got the goods as far as skill position players are concerned. It starts with Elijah Hood, one of the top running backs in the nation, and you've got a wide receiving core that is second to none in the ACC. They'll put some pressure on that Georgia defense. There's no doubt about it. This will be interesting to see how the Georgia defense in Game 1 under Kirby Smart reacts against a high-flying offense like North Carolina. It's a good offensive line. This team, UNC, actually in my power ratings, rates the highest of all teams in the Coastal Division this year. So I expect them to be, not by a wide margin, but I do expect them to be the most talented team in the Coastal. That's a pretty up-in-the-air division. You have Miami, Virginia Tech, a lot of good teams in there. But UNC, a great year last year, solid offense once again this year. Defensively, it's not that hard to figure out. Can they stop Nick Chubb or can they not stop Nick Chubb in the running game? If they can, I think it's going to be difficult for Georgia. I mean, no matter who the quarterback is here, whether it be Grayson Lambert, whether it be Jacob Eason, we don't know quite yet who it's going to be. But I would say that, if it's the freshman Eason, there's going to be a lot on his shoulders if Chubb can't run the football. This game opened up with Georgia as a 3-point favorite. It's currently down to Georgia minus 2.5. Game total is held pretty steady. Open 56. We see 56, some 56.5s out there. I even see a 55.5, a low end. That might just be a delayed number. But for the most part, you're seeing 56, 56.5. Defense on the Georgia side, they're going to try and win with that in their running game. And for North Carolina, they're going to test Georgia on that defensive side with their high-flying offense. The key for them will be if Trubisky can step in and do what Marquise Williams did for this team the last couple of years.
We're going to head to the state of Texas for our next couple of games. We'll start with technically a neutral site game. It sounds like I've been saying that a lot during this broadcast, but just so happens to be the case again here. Oklahoma and Houston battling it out, NRG Stadium in Houston. Interesting situation here. Houston is probably being touted as the most likely team outside of the Power 5 conferences to have a shot to crack the 4-team playoff. But the only way that happens is if they can get by Oklahoma in Week 1. What do you see with this game? Any chance that Houston can make some noise early in the year? I know they're a pretty sizable double-digit underdog, looking at about 11.5 points right now that Oklahoma's going to be laying. What do you see, Rob?
Well, we know that Tom Herman, who came from Ohio State to coach Houston last season, did one heck of a job with this football team, and it's likely to continue to show up with their recruiting. It did this year and likely next year as well. I think players, high school players, are absolutely looking to go to Houston now under Tom Herman. If he sticks around, which it looks like he will. He had every opportunity to leave at the end of last season, right? And he chose to stay here at Houston. So I think there's a good feel in Houston right now. And when you have a quarterback like Greg Ward Jr., there's no reason to not have a good feel. And he's got his top receiver, Chance Allen, back. You never doubt the Houston skill position players. They're always going to have running backs. They're always going to have wide receivers. This year, the offensive line, a little bit rebuilt, but really not in bad shape. I'd expect the offensive line to be good. What we don't know for sure, Rob, was last year's defensive effort put forth by the Houston Cougars a mirage, or is that the way it's going to be from now on? Because Houston did a much better job defensively last year than they had in the past. They're much more aggressive, I think, the Houston Cougars last year under Tom Herman. Now, they only returned 5 players to that side of the football, but the guys that are stepping in are somewhat tested. Houston played a little bit of or a lot of blowout games last year, so you get guys in in games that are out of hand. But to become a starter, sometimes it takes a week to figure out, and one full game to figure out whether or not these guys are going to be able to handle it or not. I happen to think Houston will be just fine. I don't know that they can live up to the expectations of a 13-1 season last year, and everybody touting them as the team that may come from the non-Power 5 to play in a New Year's Six game. This is a tough match for them. First of all, I don't know if they have the size to contend with Oklahoma's running game. Once again, you could take this ground attack of OU and their two running backs, in particular, Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, who are both back this year, and argue that that's the best running back duo in college football. When you have that, and then you have Baker Mayfield and the passing game to go with it, it's very, very difficult to stop. You can't focus in on anything. You have to play Oklahoma all over the field. I think that Bob Stoops has a tremendous defense coming back this year. Overall, they only lost 19 lettermen, which is kind of a small number for a Power 5 school. So there's a lot of talent returning to Oklahoma. It does show up in the line, like you said, Rob, even though this game is being played at NRG, which is the home of the Houston Texans, so really right in Houston's backyard. The money doesn't seem to care about that. Game opened at 10. It's gone all the way to 11.5 and 12. And, in fact, at one major offshore, Pinnacle, we now see 12.5 on this game. So folks really turning towards the Oklahoma side here. Probably don't think that Houston has the depth or size to hang with Oklahoma. I think that the victory at the end of the season in the bowl game last year when Houston beat Florida State in that bowl contest, I think that opened up a lot of eyes. You know, maybe last year Oklahoma would have sleptwalked into this game, not taking Houston as seriously. But off of the 13-1 season, off of all of the hype, off of that win against Florida State, you can best believe that Oklahoma's had 6 months to get ready for Houston, and they'll be ready. They'll probably travel well. This is not a long road trip whatsoever to go to Houston, so I'd expect to see plenty of OU supporters in the stands. Once again, money really seems to favor Oklahoma here. It also favors the total going over. Opened at 66, currently up to 68 almost everywhere. I see a couple of stray 67.5s out there, but mostly 68 right now. We'll see if it continues to go up there in the week.
One more big game in Texas to take a look at, and it involves defending national champion Alabama. They're going to open up at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, playing against University of Southern California Trojans. Big expectations for Alabama this year. They are the preseason number 1. Talk of another national title has been swirling in Alabama, but they do have some question marks, especially at the quarterback position where Nick Saban's planning to play 2 quarterbacks here in week 1. Rob, is any of that really going to matter? Does USC have enough talent to hang with this very talented and deep Alabama team?
Well, that's, if you're a Pac-10 supporter, I think you believe so, Rob. Clay Helton took over middle of last year, did a great job with his team, kind of remolded them offensively into more of or at least play calling wise, he kind of settled it down and divided the play calling between run and pass. USC had become a very pass-heavy team, and Helton came in, kind of reestablished their running game. They played very well down the stretch, and that led into this season where they have pretty high expectations in that Pac-12 South. UCLA, I think right now, to most people, the favorite, but USC certainly, if not the co-favorite. Some probably choose them to win that division. We'll see how that goes. They have a couple of things that get switched here. Obviously, you lose Justin Wilcox, your defensive coordinator. He goes off to run the Wisconsin defense now. I'm going to bring back a blast from the past. Clancy Pendergast comes back to the Pac-12. He runs that kind of unique 5-2 system. You remember him from the Cal Golden Bears running that 5-2. This team has, they're so talented, Rob, across the front seven, and they're so deep that it really, they can fit any system. So I don't think system change really matters. It's just the terminology. How quick can the players get used to the play calls, and can they get used to Pendergast right away? Once again, players really voiced their opinions on liking this conversion over to the 5-2. He's a defensive coordinator that will throw everything at you. So Alabama with a new quarterback, as you mentioned, they're going to go with two quarterbacks here. This is a defensive coordinator that in a press conference discussing his defense back in the spring said that they may run exotic things like a 2-4-5, 2 down linemen, 4 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. The reason why I mentioned Clancy Pendergast and his varied amount of unique defenses is that it's going to be confusing for a brand new Alabama quarterback. We'll see if USC can confuse the Alabama quarterbacks into some mistakes here. I think that's the way they win the game, because if Alabama is just able to line up, hand off, and run over USC, you don't have much of a chance in that situation. Because USC, even though the offense figures to be explosive, they named their quarterback Max Brown about a week and a half ago, and Max Brown's as highly touted as it gets. And we know that USC is absolutely loaded where wide receiver is concerned. They, could arguably have the two best. If you wanted to just go wide receiving duo, they could have the two best in the nation. So throwing the football is going to be a key component to the USC offense this year as far as chunk yardage is concerned. But you got to protect your quarterback, and you've got to be able to run the football a little bit. And Alabama's defense certainly will pose a problem there. I think the biggest thing here, Rob, to me, happened back in July for Alabama. Remember back when their star left tackle, Cam Robinson, a lot of draft experts figure he'll go inside the top 10 of the NFL draft next year. And Cam Robinson was arrested in Louisiana, and there was a whole big uproar over the fact that, charges got dropped and Nick Saban didn't take any disciplinary action against Robinson. If Alabama had lost Robinson, if the charges had not been dropped and the arrest stuck and they had lost Robinson for this season, I think that would have been the ticket for other teams to maybe find a hole in Alabama. But Robinson's going to play here, one of the best left tackles in the country, if not the best. And that just helps the offense so much more. It helps the young quarterback so much more. They have receivers. I talked about USC's, but Alabama's receivers obviously just as good. If they can get the football in their hands, they're as explosive as any. So you've got a game here where I think that the advantage lies in the Alabama defense. But the big question here is it worth 11.5 points? Now, news came out today on the USC side that their starting left tackle, Chad Wheeler, he started 34 games in his career. He's going to sit out the season opener because of a foot injury. Second team All Pac-12 last year. Like I say, 34 games started in his career as senior left tackle. You have to believe that Alabama, from a defensive standpoint, is going to attack the quarterback's blind side here with him out. So that, like I say, if there's an advantage in this game, I think it lies with the Alabama defense. Is it worth 11.5 points? We'll have to see. Bettors kind of think so because the game's been bet up from Alabama 10 all the way up to Alabama, the current 11.5.
Well, Rob, that takes care of some of the biggest matchups of the weekend, but we all know that there are a ton of college football games this weekend. Let's take a look at some off-of-the-radar games that might not be at the top of the mind of the sports gamblers this weekend, but that should be a lot of fun to watch and maybe even wager on a little bit. I'm going to go out to the Pac-12. They're going to be playing a game, Glendale, Arizona. Arizona Wildcats will be facing BYU in the opener. Very late kickoff on the East Coast Saturday night. Probably won't be a game a lot of people are going to be sitting down to watch on the East Coast, but it should be a great game nonetheless. Pretty close to a pick'em. Arizona favored by about 1.5 points right now. Rob, talk a little bit about that one and then give us a game of your own.
Well, we know that it's a big year for Rich Rodriguez and the Arizona Wildcats. I mean, I don't know if Arizona puts up another 6-6, if in fact Rich Rod can survive that. A lot of heat on him, and he's, gone to drastic measures here, Rob, in order to try and secure his head coaching position. Now, they have brought in Boise State defensive coordinator Marcel Yates to run the defense. Here's, and give Rodriguez credit for this. Let's give him credit for this, because Rich Rodriguez, ever since I can remember, I mean, all the way back to Tulane, Rich Rodriguez has been a proponent of that 3-3-5 stack defense. You don't see it very much. West Virginia has run it for years, but you don't see it across college football very much. It's unique to Rich Rod. He went to Michigan as head coach and tried to force feed that 3-3-5 down their throats, and we know what the defensive results were for Michigan while he was head coach. I mean, they put up some of their worst numbers that team has put up, dating back to as long as I've been alive, really. So that didn't work. He brings that 3-3-5 to Arizona, and it's not working here either. And like I said to start this, give him credit because he's brought in brand new DC, Marcel Yates, and gave him the keys to the defense. Listen, you can jump the 3-3-5, and it's the first thing Yates did. He jumped it. He put in his Boise State, the preferred 4-2-5 that he runs, and we'll see if it makes a difference. Arizona still, I think, Rob, is a little shy depth-wise on the defensive side of the football, but a 4-2-5 is the defense that you tend to use to mask a lack of depth or a lack of size, as I said earlier. And we'll see if the Arizona results get better. I'll tell you this, they can't get any worse than what they were last year as far as the defensive side of the football is concerned. I think where you can really get excited about Arizona is on the offense. This team should be really, really good on the offensive side of the football. They were really good last year. I think Rodriguez has hinted that he's going to push the envelope even a little more this year. A new Solomon, been the starting quarterback there now for a couple of years. Samaje Grant, Trey Griffey, Nate Phillips, these wide receivers that they have, Wilson at running back. It's a good team. It's a skill position loaded team. And I think one hindrance, and this was a real sad note, I think it happened about a month ago, but their starting center, Zach Camelia, actually died in his sleep. He had 27 games the last couple of years and 6 starts last year. He was projected to start at center this season. During fall practice, Arizona had to regroup. The center position on the offensive line is key. We'll see how Arizona fills that void. But otherwise, I think, it could be same old out of Arizona, all offense, no defense, but it'll be interesting because Yates is a hard-nosed defensive coordinator. It'll be interesting to see if his 4-2-5 takes hold here with Arizona. If it does, they could be a surprise team, Rob. I could honestly say they could be a surprise team if, in fact, that defense comes through because the offense is going to be that good. They opened up a pick here, currently 1-point favorite. Total's gone down from 63 to 60.5. I don't know if there's a team in college football that has a better quarterback situation than does BYU. Certainly BYU as an independent now, and perhaps maybe even going to the Big 12. We've heard a lot of talk about that. Maybe them ending up in the Big 12. But they've had good seasons the last couple of years, but they've been hurt by injury. And no injury was bigger last year than the injury to their quarterback. So now you're all set. Tanner Mangum can go back to being the backup that he was, and BYU can be set at the quarterback position. What they have going on over there is a complete switch of the coaching staff. Kalani Sitake's in. He was the Oregon State DC last year, was a defensive coordinator for Utah 6 years before that. Kai Detmer's your new offensive coordinator here. So there's a lot of changes going on at BYU. Detmer's going to run a West Coast style offense that he learned in the NFL. So if you think about Green Bay's West Coast, picture that in BYU. That's what you're going to get this year out of them as far as offensive style is concerned. And on the defensive side of the football, they had to make the complete conversion from a 3-4, which 3-4 has been there forever. And now they're into a 4-3. Bronco Mendenhall's defense was in place at BYU for a long, long time. So I think that the switches here are pretty severe on both sides of the football, and I'm interested to see how BYU reacts. So you got a lot going on in this Week 1 game. And, as we've talked through these games and analyzed them, you can tell that there's a lot going on for a lot of these teams. And sometimes it takes a week, 2 weeks to sort it out and see who is going to mesh the quickest. Like I say, for Arizona, if that defense even improves by, let's say, 6 points per game, that's going to be a pretty good football team this year inside the Pac-12. We'll wait to see how this game goes, but it's near pick'em and probably rightfully so.
And what game are you looking at, Rob, that maybe a couple unranked teams are playing, or just a game that really isn't getting a lot of hype, that could be a good opportunity for either the gamblers or just a fun game to watch?
Well, I think, and I'll go way off the charts here for you, Rob, but I'm very, very interested in SMU, North Texas. I happen to think SMU is going to be a real good football team this year under Chad Moore's second year down there. Love Matt Davis, the quarterback for this team. Remember, Matt Davis was a very high recruit of Texas A&M, but got stuck behind Johnny Manziel and had to transfer out, and he's been running SMU for the last couple of years. Defensively, they're still going to struggle, but boy, offensively, this is a good football team. And defensively, they might get a little bit better this year. Morris has added a couple of pieces to that defense, and I think as the years go by, they'll get a little bit better and better. But his offense is very tough to contend with. We saw that last year, even against the tougher teams in the AAC. You can think back to the game against Temple, where SMU put up 40 points, and that was about as miraculous a point spread cover as I think I saw all last year that went to Temple. I think they won that game 60-40, but they scored an amazing amount of points in the last 4 minutes to do so. They're actually losing in the fourth quarter. SMU let a lot of games get away in the fourth quarter last year. Lack of depth. Davis would get fatigued and make some mistakes, get a little bit frustrated. They're a year older, a year better. So I'm looking at SMU as a team that could be a point spread go with for bet on this season. But North Texas, probably just as interesting, because this new wave, Rob, is to get these high school guru offensive coaches, get them into college, and then get them into a head coaching post. And that's just what we have here at North Texas. Seth Luttrell has been an outstanding offensive coordinator the past 3-4 years. He was with Indiana under Kevin Wilson. We know Indiana's offense is explosive. He was in North Carolina the last 2 years under Larry Fedora. He's going to bring that offensive system to North Texas. Now, it's fun to talk about, but whether or not a team can handle that type of system right off the bat is another story. They have Graham Harrell as their offensive coordinator. Now, Graham Harrell quarterbacked the air raid system at Texas Tech under Mike Leach, so that shows you the direction they're going with this offense. Last year, Graham Harrell was with Mike Leach and his coaching staff at Washington State. You're going to see a lot of 4 and 5 wides, one back, empty back sets, and sling it around the yard. Where that comes into trouble for a team like North Texas is if you have continual 3 and outs because you don't grasp the system right away, and you have a Swiss cheese defense like they do, put up 3 touchdowns in 4 minutes against you because your D is constantly on the field. That may happen to North Texas early here. There's a lot of belief in this team, though, when you look at the line and the way it's moved. game opened SMU 12.5, has gone all the way down to 9.5. The home team, North Texas, taking all the money at this point in time. I don't know that I agree with it. I think SMU is the better team, although I will say this. The line, oddsmakers probably were thinking along the lines that I am as far as SMU being a good point spread team this year, because even my power ratings show that SMU should be a 7.5-point favorite here. So oddsmakers really padded SMU to start the season, probably detracted or subtracted a lot from the North Texas power rating because of the coaching switch, and you wind up with a big, bulky 12.5. I think bettors saw early value. That's why it's been shooed down to 9.5. But I still think SMU is probably 10 points better than North Texas at this time of the season, game number 1. So that's one I'll be looking at. We'll see which way it goes, and keep an eye on head coach Luttrell and Graham Harrell and that, sling it Mike Leach style air raid offense.
One other thing to talk about here, Rob, as we start to wind things down, is perhaps a top 25 team that should be on upset alert this week. Do you want to take a crack at it first, or do you want to hear mine?
I'd probably rather hear yours, Rob, to tell you the truth. I don't know if I have a good one, so I'll hear yours.
I think that Notre Dame should go on upset alert this week. Not saying that they're going to lose the game, but they absolutely manhandled Texas last year. I think they won by 34, 35 points, something like that. And this year, Texas has a very good defense. Notre Dame's had some off-the-field issues, had some personnel changes, and I think that this spread says a lot. Notre Dame only a small favorite in the game. Could be a fun one to watch on Sunday evening, to say the least.
Yeah, no doubt. And this line has recently, within the last 48 hours, because of the Notre Dame suspensions, because of the trouble that they got into, it's really been bet down. Notre Dame originally, Rob, had been bet up in this game to 6.5, and now we've seen it come crashing down to 3.5 as bettors get involved with Texas, thinking that Notre Dame might be a little bit short-handed here. There's been various dismissals, suspensions, injuries, stuff that would set Notre Dame back, especially in their defensive secondary. We know Notre Dame had issues last year in the secondary. They had issues due to injury in that secondary last year, and now with Max Redfield suspended, he's your veteran of the secondary, the leader, so to speak. With him gone, you're missing two key components of that to start the season. It's tough, but Texas has to take advantage of it. Now, what you get with Texas, everything you said, and then some. They go right to Tulsa. And Charlie Strong's on the hot seat. Charlie Strong looks around the Big 12 and he says, Oklahoma's running an up-tempo offense. Texas Tech's running an up-tempo offense. Baylor runs an up-tempo offense. TCU runs an up-tempo offense. And I think the TCU and Oklahoma ones are really the ones that woke Charlie Strong up here, because Gary Patterson, for him to make the switch that he made 2 years ago in offensive style, you really wouldn't think Gary Patterson would have done that, but he did. Oklahoma went out last year. They got Lincoln Riley from East Carolina, formerly of Texas Tech, to come run their offense. Charlie Strong's sitting there in this stagnant pro-style deal and figures, I got to get up with the Joneses. So he goes right to Tulsa and raids Philip Montgomery's staff and takes Sterling Gilbert to be his offensive coordinator. So you're going to see Texas now as one of these extreme up-tempo teams. Do they have the pieces to do it? That's the question here. You're going to start a freshman quarterback, Shane Buechele, who, by all accounts, Rob, is an absolute gunslinger, can't be phased, and a lot of people think he's just going to come right out of the chute successfully. We'll see. And he's got the defensive secondary to pick apart here if that's the way Texas goes in this one. I think it will be. Like I say, they're committed to this wing it around the yard type of offense. They've got running backs to go with it, so they can diversify their offense, which stops the other team from just singling out one thing to stop. You have to pay attention to everything if you're Notre Dame here. I think Texas can score points in this game if Buechele plays well. You know what? If he doesn't play well and they have to bring in Tyrone Swoops, it's not the worst thing in the world. Swoops has been a quarterback there before. He actually adds a running dimension to Texas, which would throw Notre Dame off a little bit. I might not be surprised to see Charlie Strong intertwine both of these guys in this particular game. So theoretically, Texas has a real opportunity offensively, but Notre Dame's ground game is going to be an absolute beast. Now, they lost some receivers, but their ground game is going to be an absolute beast here, especially when you have a running quarterback like Malik Zaire. But they go three deep with guys who could start almost anywhere and an offensive line that's really, really good as well. So I think it'll be interesting. I really do. I think before the off-the-field problems, people were leaning towards Notre Dame. Now, with the off-field problems and the way they're going to affect that secondary, especially when this game starts, we see the line going the other way and towards Texas. Should be a real good game.
One other thing that we need to do every week here, we're going to take a look, and it's very hard on Tuesday. We've got to take a look at the weather forecast each week just to see if there's anything major going on that could impact a lot of games. The only thing of note this week is a tropical depression could turn into a tropical storm that's going to blow through Florida on Thursday. Really shouldn't have any effect on any of the games. And by the weekend, it's going to be off the coast of the Mid-Atlantic, maybe just a little bit of a breeze along the coast, but nothing that should really impact the weather there. The biggest threat would be some thunderstorms that could pop up in some spots, especially across the south and the Florida Panhandle. So just keep an eye out on the weather. That's something you'll need to check a lot closer to game time, though. But we'll do our best to make sure if there's any major weather events that could be looming that our gamblers are well aware of them.
Yeah, and we'll keep that updated throughout the week. If you visit robvinosports.com, got great weather reports right there, so you can check in throughout the week. As I said earlier, use it as a source for your handicapping information throughout the football season, and when we turn to basketball, certainly throughout the basketball season as well.
Well, Rob, I think that's going to do it for Week 1 preview here. Really enjoyed doing the show with you. Looking forward to doing it throughout the year. Just want to say to all of our listeners, good luck with all of your college football wagers on opening weekend. Until next Tuesday, this is Rob O'Connor and Rob Vino of Rob Vino Sports.